first of all, I hope that you've all enjoyed the session so far. Conferences are wonderful for networking, but I always say that you need to walk away with at least one new idea that you can take back to the office. I want to thank the Business for Good board for inviting me here today. As Emily mentioned, I'm currently writing a book on alternative business structures, so B Corps, perpetual purpose trusts, co-ops. And preparing this talk has pushed me to think even more deeply about those ideas. And I also want to thank the members of Business for Good who have not only welcomed my colleagues and me, but have welcomed our students. So thank you for that. Before I say anything about purpose-driven businesses, I want to begin with the song that you may or may not have heard when you walked in here. Did anybody hear a song? What was it? Tracy Chapman, and it was? Fast Car. Okay, so I just bought a new car. I have this red car, and it's fast. It's not the one that I'm going to show you, okay? All right. This way. Okay, so these are some of the lyrics from her song. So I chose this song because, not because it's political, not because it's trendy, it's not about entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship, it's not about policy. I chose it because it tells a story that many of us recognize. It's about work, it's about hope, it's about the belief that if you show up, work hard, take responsibility, life should slowly get better. And that's what I believed when I was growing up. In the song, there's a quiet optimism that one steady job, one reliable paycheck might finally change the future. But what's heartbreaking about Fast Car is that nothing really changes. Not because people don't try, but because the structure underneath them never shifts. And that's where I want to start today. Because when we zoom out and we see that structure does change, just not always in the ways that benefit everyone. You've probably heard this statistic. In 1965, the average CEO of a large American company made about 21 times the pay of a typical worker. Today, that number is anywhere from 300, I've seen it as high as 380 times. Nothing about workers became 15 times less capable. Nothing about their effort collapsed. Structure does change. The question is, who does it serve? Incentives change, ownership structures changed, governance changed, and when structures change, outcomes change. Business for Good isn't about asking leaders to care more. It's about redesigning what happens by default. Because when pressure hits, defaults decide. Most people already care. Most people are already working hard. But if the default is extraction, care cannot override it. If the default is to be sold, culture won't save it. It's not about working harder. Most people already are. It's about the architecture. How do we design our companies? Who shares in the upside? Who has a voice? Whether effort actually leads somewhere. A brand can inspire. Architecture determines who benefits. So, if business is architecture, what are the design questions that matter? I'm going to offer you these 5. And if you own a company, ask yourself, where is your company strong and where is it fragile? So, who benefits? Growth is not neutral. The real question isn't whether we're growing, it's who grows with us. When profits increase, where do they go? When valuation rises, who participates? Here in San Diego, when Bob Taylor and Kurt Lustig, the founders of Taylor Guitar in El Cajon, began thinking about retirement, that was about 10 years ago, they had options. They could sell to private equity. Everybody's selling to private equity. They could sell to a strategic buyer. They could cash out. Instead, they transferred ownership to employees through an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. Now, when the company succeeds, the people building the guitars build wealth. That's not charity, that's structural design. So let's make this concrete. I put a receipt here from my favorite garden store. I'm a gardener, I live out in Hamul, got a bit of land. If you notice on that receipt, it says an employee-owned company. Imagine an employee at Armstrong Garden Centers. It's a private company based in California. Let's say she started in the mid-1990s at just above the minimum wage. They don't start quite at the minimum wage, they a little bit higher than minimum. When she started, it was a job. What she may not fully realize is that Armstrong is employee-owned through an ESOP. She doesn't buy shares, the company contributes them. Over 3 decades, she stays. She grows into leadership, maybe becomes a manager, and quietly, ownership grows too. When she retires at 62, based upon the typical ESOP growth assumptions, her ESOP account could be worth roughly $575,000. For someone who began at minimum wage, that is shared upside. That is architecture that compounds effort. One of the most powerful examples of ownership are worker cooperatives. A worker cooperative is a business entirely owned, managed, and democratically controlled by its employees. There are over 3 million co-ops worldwide. They exist in all sectors in over 100 countries. Cooperatives provide jobs for 10% of the world's employed population. That's roughly 280 million people in this world are working in co-ops. You may have heard of a worker co-op in Mondragon, Spain. This is up in the north of Spain in the Basque Country. When I lived in Spain, Mondragon in the Basque Country was one of the 2 poorest areas in all of Spain. Today, Mondragon, because of the co-ops, is the 2nd wealthiest area of Spain after Catalonia, where Barcelona is. And by the way, for the people who went with me last year to Mondragon, one thing we never saw in the Basque Country were people who were homeless. Scami in Italy is a major international producer of machinery for ceramics, packaging, and food. They have a parent co-op in Italy with over 75 manufacturing, distribution, and service companies, including in the United States. They're worldwide, employing 6,000 people. They're in the Milan region, the Emilia-Romagna region, the wealthiest region of Italy. The US company, Cooperative Home Care, based in New York, is the largest worker-owned co-op in the US, focusing on healthcare services with over 2,000 employees. Up and Go, based in New York, this one's fascinating, is a worker-owned platform cooperative that connects customers with professional cleaning services. And unlike the standard gig economy apps, it is built on a model of democratic ownership and fair wages. Every cleaning professional on the platform is a co-owner of the business. 1 person, 1 vote. Cleaners keep 95% of the service price, with only 5% going toward maintaining the digital platform. And by the way, in traditional apps, the company often takes anywhere from 20 to 50%. Up and Go has democratic governance. Worker owners have a vote in major decisions. business decisions, including pricing, cancellation policies, and company standards. And what I'm trying to say is this is not niche. When I talk co-ops in San Diego, I get this look from people. This is not niche, it's global. California is home to over 100 worker co-ops, making it, after New York, the state with the largest number. In San Diego County, we tend to have worker co-ops that are in the food services industry, and we're going to be seeing more co-ops in this county. In a worker co-op, the people doing the work share in profits and ownership, like the Che Cafe at UCSD, collectively run by its members. In a consumer co-op, members share in the economic benefit, like Ocean Beach People's Food Co-op or the new Suncoast Co-op market in Imperial Beach. In a producer co-op, my first job was in a producer co-op with cranberries. Think Ocean Spray, Land O'Lakes, Dairy Farmers of America, Sunkissed. Farmers or suppliers share in the value created, like the Food Shed Cooperative, a farmer-owned network distributing produce across San Diego County. Cooperatives are a structural commitment to shared prosperity. But money alone doesn't create dignity, which brings us to the second question. Who belongs? Not just who benefits, but who belongs. Culture is architecture too. Every company teaches people something about their worth. When someone walks into your workplace, how do they feel? Do they feel replaceable or do they feel essential? Gallup reports that roughly 1/3 of US employees are engaged at work. So nearly 7 out of 10 are disengaged. That's not a laziness epidemic. It's a design failure. We don't have a work ethic crisis. We have an architecture crisis. In the United States, bereavement leave and childcare are left largely to employer policy and market forces. In most wealthy democracies, the majority of these supports are treated as public guarantees. That difference, by the way, isn't cultural. It's structural. Our systems optimize for economic simplicity rather than human-centered support at difficult times. We design quarterly earnings with more generosity than we design time for grief. And that's not because leaders are heartless. It's because we inherited systems optimized for capital efficiency, not human dignity. In cooperatives, people aren't just employees or customers. They are members. They belong. And belonging isn't emotional. It's structural. Belonging changes behavior. Belonging means voice. Belonging means contributions matter. So you all know, I teach graduate students here in the Kroc School. I see some of them, and they are basically Gen Z, okay? And they talk with me not just about salary. They're asking, and I teach social entrepreneurship every fall, and I can assure you they ask these questions. Where will I have a voice? Where will I be developed? Where will I be part of something meaningful? Where will leadership listen to me? They're asking about how decisions are made. They're asking about B Corp certification. They're asking about companies being employee-owned. They are not just asking questions about culture. They're asking questions about structure. And here is the business reality. The companies that answer the belonging question well, they win the talent contest. Let me share a story with you. Here at the Kroc School, I lead the Global Executive Seminar. We take San Diego CEOs to lots of places, but Barcelona, because Barcelona is a hotbed of alternative business models, innovation, and social entrepreneurship. One of the companies we visit is Ferrer, a privately owned pharmaceutical company, and a certified B Corporation. While Ferrer remains privately held, it has aligned its governance and bylaws with its mission and stakeholder communities, embedding purpose and impact into how their decisions are made. On their walls, they have these kinds of signs. We are about a fair society. You can read them. So my colleague Juan Roche and I visited lots of companies in Spain before the seminar to decide which ones we were going to take people to. He and I were in Ferrer for about 2.5, 3 hours. When we got into the elevator, we both looked at each other and said, we have to take the seminar participants here. It's such an amazing company. And almost simultaneously, we both said, I want to work here. You could feel the architecture of belonging. Culture is architecture too. But belonging without structural voice is fragile, which leads us to the third question. Who decides? Every company runs on decisions. Who gets to make them? Whose interests are structurally protected? Purpose without power is fragile. Here in San Diego, we have roughly 50 certified B corporations, and becoming a certified B Corp is not branding. It requires rigorous, and some of you I know went to the session today, it requires rigorous third-party assessment and legal commitment to consider stakeholders, not just shareholders, in decision-making. That changes architecture. And co-ops go even further. They embrace democratic governance from the beginning with one person, one vote, not based on capital invested, based on membership. That is not advisory participation, that is structural power. Oops, not quite ready for that yet. Okay. And even structures need to go even further. Architecture protects what you believe when it becomes inconvenient. I don't know if you remember about 3 or 4 years ago, Tractor Supply. I was so excited in Hamul 7 years ago when they moved, because all of a sudden I had one store I could go to buy stuff for my garden. But about 3 years ago, and by the way, they signed the Declaration for Corporations on Human Rights. I'm in a peace school. I knew that they had signed that. They had a DEI committee. I was so excited. Tractor Supply has come to Hamul. Well, 2 or 3 years ago, what happened? It disappeared. The company did away with their committee. They did away with signing the Human Rights Declaration. And you can imagine why. They are owned by private equity firms. If customers start complaining about something, it's not in the DNA, it's going to disappear. So even ownership structures have to go even further than what I'm talking about. The research that's coming out of NCO, this is at Rutgers University, the research is just amazing. The strongest predictor of company performance isn't ownership stake. It wasn't company size. It was management's commitment to participation. And here's the key insight. You don't have to be a benefit corporation. You don't have to be a certified benefit corporation. You don't have to be a co-op or a perpetual purpose trust or whatever form. Companies that build real participation, sharing information, inviting voice, involving employees in decisions, they grew 3 to 4 times faster than those companies that simply distributed shares. Ownership on paper is not enough. If your ownership culture hasn't shifted, the fix isn't more shares, it's more participation. Ownership without participation is simply financial engineering. Ownership with participation is architecture. Even if you share upside even if you expand governance, there's still a fourth question. What circulates? Every dollar your company earns leaves a trail. It either circulates locally or it leaks away. Money circulates, power circulates, information circulates, or it leaks out of communities, out of companies, out of workers' lives. Circulation builds resilience. Leakage builds fragility. When Business for Good gathered at Olivewood Gardens last September, Chef Drew Deckman and his team from 3131 by Deckman's prepared an absolutely delicious dinner for us. Many of the people in this room were there. What made the evening powerful wasn't just the food and good conversation. It was the architecture behind it. Chef Deckman sources locally. He strengthens nearby producers. He keeps economic activity rooted here. The money didn't just go to buy dinner, it reinforced a local ecosystem. That's economic circulation. The same dollar that fed you also feeds a farmer. That farmer hires locally, and that worker shops locally. Circulation compounds. So some companies choose local sourcing. Cooperatives design for it. In a worker co-op, profits circulate among workers instead of exiting to distant shareholders. In a consumer co-op, members are both customers and beneficiaries. In a producer co-op, independent producers retain value that would otherwise be extracted. Ownership rooted in place is circulation by design. Small procurement choices are structural decisions, but circulation answers one part of the question. It tells you where the value flows. It does not tell us what happens when leadership changes. And that leads to our final question. I'm a professor of leadership studies. I always end with leadership. The question is, okay, what continues? Every founder will eventually transition. Will your architecture default to extraction or stewardship? Taylor Guitars and Armstrong Garden Center both chose ESOPs. And here in San Diego, I want to name another example, Rescue Agency. Rescue is a behavior change marketing agency. They design public health campaigns, help people stop smoking, improve mental health, prevent substance abuse. And their business model is literally about shifting behavior for public good. 2014, Rescue became a certified B Corporation, publicly committed to stakeholder accountability and transparency. A few years ago, they took another additional step, structural step. They became a 100% ESOP-owned company. And by the way, a lot of companies are ESOPs, but only 10% of the staff, 5% upper management share in those plans. I'm interested in 100% ESOP. That move by Rescue wasn't branding, it was architecture. A B Corp signals purpose. An ESOP shifts ownership. Together, they change the default. But the deeper question isn't just who owns the company today. It's what happens to purpose when leadership changes, when the markets shift, and when the founder is no longer in the room. Ownership with participation is architecture, and some leaders go even further. They establish employee ownership trusts, EOTs, or perpetual purpose trusts, PPTs, which embed mission into the legal DNA of the company, so stewardship is not optional and purpose does not disappear at the moment of liquidity. I just came back from a conference in Austin, Texas. Leaders from around the nation gathered to focus on perpetual purpose trusts. It was sold out. People that I wanted to go couldn't get in. This is no longer fringe, my friends. This is becoming mainstream. Founders, investors, and lawyers are actively designing companies meant to endure, not flip. Patagonia transferred ownership to a purpose trust to permanently protect its environmental mission. Bosch has long embedded stewardship through trust ownership, and they operate under a foundation ownership model. Companies like Bosch and Newman's Own, I used to work there a long time ago, they demonstrate how foundation ownership can preserve mission beyond the founder. These structures ensure that when founders leave, purpose does not. Because culture can be strong, profit can be shared, wealth can circulate. But if your architecture defaults to extraction at the moment of transition, none of it lasts. Business for good isn't about better intentions. It's about better defaults. It's about designing companies where participation, stewardship, and purpose are not personality traits. They're built into the system, built into the DNA. That is architecture. So let me return to Fast Car. In that song, there's effort, there is work, but the structure never changes. And so the future never shifts. When I think about the employee at Armstrong Garden Center, starting at minimum wage and retiring with more than $500,000, I think about the difference architecture makes. Nothing about her effort changed, the structure did. Same work ethic, same long days, different architecture. One absorbs, the other compounds. Business for good is not about being nicer. It's not about branding. It's about design. Who benefits? Who belongs? Who decides? What circulates and what continues? Because businesses are not just economic engines. They are belonging engines, wealth-building engines. They are community-shaping engines. Every structure either widens opportunity or narrows it. So let me leave you with this. If someone wrote a song about your company 20 years from now, would it be about working hard and never quite getting ahead? Or about stability, dignity, ownership? Architecture is not abstract. Architecture is deeply human. And every one of you in this room is an architect. Thank you.
Yes, please make some noise. Keep making some noise for Paula.